There's an old Chinese saying, or curse, may you live in interesting times. And if one takes a look at the headlines that are coming out of Ukraine today, out of Russia, indeed out of the world, we've been indeed cursed. Let's start off with something that maybe the people of Russia don't view as a curse, and that is, of course, the successful completion of the referenda in Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk, where the citizens of these four former Ukrainian territories came out in overwhelming numbers and voted in favor of rejoining Russia. Now, there's a political process that's related to this. You have to go through the bureaucracy. So the Russian Duma, or parliament, will meet, will discuss this. It will be pushed up to the Russian Federal Assembly, then turned over to the president. But I think everybody can agree that the outcome is a guaranteed, that Russia is going to grow bigger in the next couple of days, and Ukraine is going to become smaller. This is critical because of a number of things. It's not just about the will of the people. It's about radically transforming the nature of the conflict that's ongoing between Russia and Ukraine, or as Russian President Vladimir Putin has stated, between Russia and the collective West, because that's what's happening here. I think in previous episodes, we've discussed what I call the game-changing nature of NATO intervention into the Ukrainian conflict. Well, yes, it was a game changer, but by holding these referenda and expanding Russia, transforming these territories into Mother Russia, Russia has changed the game. It's no longer going to be a struggle between Ukrainian/NATO forces and Russia and its allies on Ukrainian soil. Any future combat, once these territories are absorbed, will be a struggle between foreign powers against Mother Russia. And this is a transformative moment. How Russia will respond is yet to be seen, but it's clear that Russia has indicated that any attack on Russia proper will be treated much differently than the special military operation and the constraints that have been placed on Russian military forces to date. Now, in parallel to the referenda, we had the Russian president order up what's called a partial mobilization. That is 300,000 reservists, people with prior military service, are being in the process of being mobilized, organized into combat units that will then be sent to the region of conflict to reinforce the Russian forces and their allies that are currently engaged in combat against Ukraine and whatever NATO mercenaries have been assembled. This is a big deal. The Russian government has said that these 300,000 troops are not going to be frontline combatants. They're going to be used to secure the Russian border and to provide strategic depth in the areas that are in conflict: Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Lugansk. And in doing so, free up the 200 or so thousand regular combat forces that Russia currently has deployed to the region, and whose numbers were, frankly speaking, insufficient to the task of completing the special military operation, especially given the reality that NATO had poured in tens of billions of dollars worth of weaponry and provided training and other assistance to a Ukrainian military that has become little more than a proxy army of NATO. But here's the question: is this going to be enough? So far, the Russian military has not performed what I would say in a manner reflective of its doctrine. They have operated, in fact, in a manner which deviates significantly from its doctrine. Will the provision of these 300,000 troops enable Russia to reorganize itself, to bring the combat formations that are committed to their full status and prepared to engage this NATO Ukrainian force the way the Russian army has always been trained and equipped to do so? Will a combined arms army or a First Guards tank army be allowed to fight the way they've trained to fight against a NATO-style enemy, or will they continue to operate in a way that deviates from doctrine and so far has failed to produce the kind of dramatic victories that one would normally have associated with the employment of Russian troops in these numbers? It's a fair question. Beyond the battlefield, however, we have other things happening. Just this week, we've seen the sabotage of the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines, strategic energy assets of Russia and European conglomerates that had been, in the case of Nord Stream 1, providing a significant quantity of gas, Russian gas from Russia through the Baltic Ocean into Germany, and Nord Stream 2, which had been completed last year and was prepared to ship gas, but had been prevented from doing so by the intervention of the United States into European affairs, pressuring Germany to prevent the opening of that. There were demonstrations in the streets in Germany earlier this week where the German citizens were starting to tell their government, we don't want to freeze this winter. We would like it if our factories stayed open. We would like it if we had jobs, if we could have food, if energy wasn't priced through the roof. Maybe it's time for the German government to turn on Nord Stream 2. That's a discussion the United States did not want to have between the German people and their government. So the United States took Nord Stream 2 and Nord Stream 1 off the table. Why do I say the United States? On February 8th of this year, American President Joe Biden said straight up that if Russian tanks went into Ukraine, then the United States would shut down Nord Stream 2. And by shut down, he said it will not operate. I think we need to take the president at his word. This is an act of terrorism. It's a casus belli, and it dangerously escalates the tension between Russia, United States, Russia, and Europe. And what the fallout will be, we don't know. But one of the things we do know is that because of the Russian referendum, or the referendum in the four former Ukrainian oblasts, because of Russia's mobilization, and because of this terrorist attack against the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, there's been an awful lot of talk of nuclear war. Most of the talk comes from the West, who's accusing Russia of being prepared to launch a preemptive nuclear strike against Ukraine and what the consequences of that would be. There's a lot of nuclear saber rattling, which has rightfully so made a lot of people very concerned, even afraid. Is this just rhetoric, or is this something more than that? Who better to talk to, though, than somebody who is capable of addressing all of these issues? On episode 6 of the Scott Ritter Show, I'm honored to have Andrei Gurulov, not only a member of parliament, but a former general who commanded a combined arms army of the 58th Combined, or Chief of Staff of the 58th Combined Arms Army. Honorable service, served in Syria, oversaw combat operations early on in the conflict in the Donbass. It's an absolute honor and privilege to have you here tonight, sir. Thank you for coming. I'd like to start off with the referenda. This issue is going to be going to Parliament. You're a member of Parliament. Could you talk about what the next steps are? The votes are in, they've been counted, and what's going to happen next?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to talk to you. Let's start from a different thing. There are no great victories, that's what you said. But after the referendum, which took place in 4 regions of former Ukrainian regions, Russia has 20% of former Ukrainian territories, 10 million people who consider themselves to be Russians. So we cannot say that we haven't succeeded in a particular field. The second point, as for referendum, you can talk whether it is going to be recognized or not, but when people unanimously, almost unanimously, and the share of people is just over 99% to join Russia, I believe that on the 3rd of October, State Duma is going to ratify the results. The 4th of October, the Federal Assembly, and after that, the President is going to sign the order of joining these territories to Russia. That's period. You know, in Russia, we don't care whether it's going to be recognized or not. For us, this is Russia, and period. That's how it's going to look like. We are expecting the meeting with our President tomorrow. He has prepared his address in the Kremlin walls, and he's going to highlight all the necessary points.
No, look, I agree with you. From a Russian perspective, this is a victory. It cannot be seen as anything else other than a victory. And for the people of the region who voted, this has to be a glorious day. It has to be a glorious day for all Russians. But you know, after the documents are signed, we still have reality. We have the reality that there's an ongoing conflict. We have the reality that a significant part of Kherson Oblast is still occupied by Ukrainian forces. Zaporizhia still has Ukrainian forces. A significant part of Donetsk still has Ukrainian forces. Winter is coming. You know, it's one thing to say that these regions are now part of Russia. It's another thing to make them part of Russia, meaning to bring the services in, to bring in medical services, to bring in gas, energy, proper governance. This is a significant financial burden that Russia has assumed on itself, not only in terms of completing the military conflict, but bringing these 4 districts up to Russian standard. What is the Duma going to do about that? Is there money set aside to make this happen? What's the future look like for the people who said we want to be part of Russia? Now, how do they become part of Russia?
You know, if we even do lack money, so money for new regions will be found, will be raised. We need to understand that. No one in Kherson, in Zaporozhye, in Donetsk, in Lugansk region will not be forgotten. So that's quite very sophisticated questions concerning the infrastructure revival, which was destroyed during the special military operations. We need to take Russian legal framework. We need to provide healthcare services based on the Russian standards. We have insurance free of charge medical services, which is not the case in Ukraine. It's a great benefit for people. We need to shift to the Russian educational system and on other areas. So it's not that difficult, since the first and foremost thing, we need to give jobs. We need to revive those factories which are not operating right now. It's possible. And further on, even today, we see Mariupol revival, Volnovakha revival, Donetsk, in Lugansk, People's Republics were building roads, and people see that. In fact, for you, a vivid example can be Crimea, which 8 years ago was in very bad condition. It's like bombardment, but today it is a very prospering region. And the citizens of new regions see that, they understand that it cannot be done on the spur of the moment. It takes some time to shift to proper conditions. I'm more than positive that we will manage and succeed.
I have no doubt that you will do everything in your power to make that so. Now let's shift. I ask you for a second to take off your politician's hat and put on your old military hat. And let's talk about the future. And I know that you can't talk about anything that's sensitive, and I'm not asking you to talk about anything that's sensitive, but from a Western perspective, from somebody who has studied not only the old Soviet army, but also the new Russian army and studied the tactics and the doctrine, this isn't a criticism. Russia said straight up on February 24th that this was a special military operation, which means it wasn't a declaration of war. The Russian military was not using all of the resources that could be applied in case of war. But I think the political framework of this conflict is about to change. I don't know if Russia is going to declare a new form of conflict, whether the special military operation will be converted into an anti-terrorism operation. I don't know. That's Russia's business. But one of the purposes of this 300,000-man mobilization was to free up Russian combat power. You were the chief of staff of a combined arms army. Two questions, I guess. One, have the Russian forces today fought in accordance with Russian doctrine? Have the Russian army brought together the total capabilities of the Russian military when confronting the Ukrainians? And if not, can we expect in the future the Russian military to start fighting the way that it is supposedly organized, trained, and equipped to do so?
Let's say, let's start with mobilization. It's not only mobilization for the purpose to free up those forces which are on the borderline of Russia state. The first and foremost task is to provide additional army personnel and to provide the combat efficiency. And the second part is to have reserve divisions which will not only secure the border, but will be ready to perform their duties in the whole area of Ukraine. We shouldn't forget about that. At the same time, we are capable of getting the strategic operations to kill the critical infrastructure in Ukraine, and within 2 or 3 weeks it's going to be collapsed in Ukraine. They will stay without anything, with power, without water, with sewage, everything, and it's going to change the whole nature of this special military operation. Just in simple terms. And to do that, we have all the resources and all the capabilities. All these screams about, particularly they say that Russia is going to use tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine, is nothing but a provocation. So because the use of these weapons, if we use military weapons not in Ukraine, because there are several reasons. We created nuclear weapons not for Ukraine, but to combat NATO countries. You know, NATO 3 times combat efficiency more than Russia, and the nuclear weapons is kind of not to get your faces in Russia. We were not moving towards West Europe, and it happened vice versa. And right now, we shouldn't use these weapons, tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. But if any troops of NATO are going to set their foot, and they will probably get a strike against their head. That's what our president has said. That's the essence of his statement. So we will live in Ukraine, and the task is not to destroy Ukraine totally and completely, and to destroy the people, but to get denazification, to free it of Nazism, which is quite prospering right now in Ukraine. And we keep on saying that. We just ring the bells. We keep on saying that these are real things which are very difficult to be questioned. That's how it is. That's what the case is. And to secure ourselves from further NATO expansion, they wanted to set their foot in Ukraine. They wanted to set their foot in Belarus. There was an attempt of coup d'etat in Belarus, which with the help of Russia was prevented. Let's be in earnest. So we didn't provoke anyone. We just were forced to do that. We were forced to do that since the US, with their satellites, I'm not sure how it's going to be interpreted into English, but they wanted to move up to our borders, understanding those threats which were on the table. We need to clearly understand whatever it takes, those goals set by our president will be fulfilled anyway.
Well, here's a question for you then, because the goals are stated quite clearly, and the Russian government has been absolutely unequivocal about this. Demilitarization. And demilitarization has been defined as removing all NATO influence from Ukraine. How do you do that when the Ukrainian military has become a de facto proxy of NATO? That means in order for Russia to demilitarize Ukraine, you're going to have to destroy the Ukrainian military completely. 2, denazification. The Russian government has, with justification, called the Zelensky government a Nazi regime. And we know that they've outlawed virtually every political party other than the right sector, Sloboda, other Nazi-oriented, Stepan Bandera-worshipping parties. Denazification, therefore, seems to imply regime change, that the Zelensky government will have to be removed and replaced by something else. So these are two very big missions. Is Russia actually going to do this? Is this what the objective of the special military operation is? Complete destruction of the Ukrainian military and regime change in Kiev?
Но у кого в этом есть какие-то сомнения?
You have any
именно
doubts?
так и будет.
Yeah, that's how it's going to be.
Это в любом варианте поражение
And
украинской
anyway,
армии 100%.
that's the destruction of
И
Ukrainian
я
military
думаю,
forces,
что
complete
итог должен
destruction,
быть тот, когда
complete defeat,
российская
and the
армия будет на
outcome should be
границе
when
Польши,
the
Словакии.
Russian army is going to be on the border with
Венгрии,
Poland,
Румынии.
Slovakia, Romania, and
Только после
Hungary.
этого мы
And
можем
only
сказать
after that,
спокойно о том, что
we can say
демилитаризацию
safely
мы
that
провели.
demilitarization has been
Денацификация
performed.
всё намного сложнее.
As for denazification,
Одно дело
that's a more
партии
complicated
запретить,
issue.
а
So
второе дело это
one
годы
thing to
свыше.
ban parties,
Но
and
я вам
another
хочу
thing is
напомнить,
to
что 10
cleanse
мая
all this stuff.
1945
I'd like
года
to remind you
в
that
Германии
since
никаких
May
фашистов и нацистов не осталось.
1945, we didn't have any
Осталась
Nazis and fascists
народу,
in Germany. There were a lot of people
обманутого Гитлера,
who were
которые все
actually
раскаявшиеся и
deceived
говорившие
by
о том, что
Hitler,
их обманули,
saying that they
и
were
они
deceived
туда шли, и что они
and they
готовы
didn't move
жить
the right
дальше
way
совершенно
and they
по
were
другим
ready
правилам.
to live under
К
new
счастью,
rules.
прививка Германии, она очень
Fortunately,
долго
this
работала
vaccine in
после
Germany worked for a
победы
long
в
period of
1945
time
году.
after the victory in
Но сегодня, видимо,
1945.
выросло
But
то
today,
поколение, у кого с
there is a new
памятью плохо,
generation who have a bad
в том
memory
числе и в Германии.
in Germany as well.
Поэтому сегодня эта зараза под
That's
названием
why
нацизм,
this
она опять захватывает не только Украину,
scourge,
но и
which
другие,
called
к сожалению,
Nazism,
страны,
is
в
swallowing
том
not only
числе
Ukraine but
Европейского
other countries
Союза. И
of
об этом надо
European
говорить
Union,
прямо,
and we need to
не
speak
видеть это глупо,
clearly about that. We cannot
потому
but
что
see
это
that,
придет к
since
мировому
it's going
коллапсу,
to
по
lead
сути
to
своей.
the global
Нацизм
collapse.
это страшная идеология по
Nazism
уничтожению
is
всего
an
человечества.
absolutely
И не бороться
disastrous
с ней,
ideology
наверное,
to
было
kill
бы глупо.
humanity.
А для
We
нас
should
нет
fight
другого
it.
варианта, как
And
все
for
это
us, we
сделать.
don't have any choice but to fight this.
Thank you for that answer. I think anybody listening to this, you've painted a very clear picture. There can be no doubt about what Russia intends to do. But here's my question. Does the president of Russia have to go to the Russian Duma, to the Russian parliament, and ask permission to do what you just said? Or is it assumed that you've already given him permission to execute this operation? Is there going to have to be a legal change in the framework of this conflict, or can we assume that all the legalities, all the niceties of political bureaucracy have been fulfilled, and the Russian parliament has said everything you just said? They agree with you 100%, and the Russian president can proceed without further consulting.
Вы понимаете, вы сейчас задаете вопрос, находясь в Соединенных Штатах Америки, где раздрай между республиканцами и демократами достиг неимоверного уровня, и вам трудно, наверное, понять о том, что вся страна, практически вся страна, я подчеркиваю, сплотилась возле своего президента, и уровень поддержки нашего Владимира Владимировича Путина составляет почти 90%.
And we have only 90% of support. You cannot dream of that, to be honest.
Поэтому никаких разрешений нашему президенту не надо.
Our president doesn't need
Его
any
народ
permission.
поддерживает.
He has the support of the people, 100% support of the people.
100% народа поддерживает.
100% of the people.
Сейчас что еще требуется?
What is required?
Смотрите на мобилизацию. Там есть
Look at mobilizations. Of course, there are some flaws and defects, but the people are joining this process. And you know, they wish them victory. The wives ask their husbands, come back and bring us the victory. And this is the main thing. That's what is happening in Russia. And that says that we are going to win anyway. We don't have any other option. We will win this war.
Thank you for that. All right, now let's move away from the battlefield for a second, or at least the battlefield in Ukraine. There's a new battlefield. A major piece of Russian energy infrastructure was sabotaged. Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines appear to have been blown up by a mysterious force, but it's not that mysterious. The President of the United States, back in February of this year, said if Russia moves into Ukraine, he will shut down Nord Stream 2. And it appears that the president has been, in this case, a man of his word. What does this mean for Russia? What happens next? You're a member of parliament. You view this as an act of war?
Вы знаете что? Но я думаю, оценку этим действиям даст президент.
Is going to be given by the president. But I can say the following thing. If the US has decided to have this special military operation or gasification of the whole Western Europe, killing its industry, probably they need to get help to supply no gas, no pipeline gas, no LNG from Russia. We do have all the capabilities to do that. All the screams about the fifth article of NATO Charter, if infrastructure can be destroyed, it can happen mysteriously by accident. You know, like it happened to Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2. We don't understand that it's going to be no unbiased investigation. When there is no gas from Norway, I'd like to remind you that until 2025, all the tankers have been chartered, and even a couple of charters defunctioning will cause not only collapse in Western Europe, but the gas collapse globally. You know, we're absolutely positive that the US is streaming to make some trouble, to do some trouble in Ukraine using their forces. Actually, in Ukraine, they also strive for the economic destruction of Western Europe, which is for the benefit. But in Europe, they don't understand that. Maybe they understand that, but they keep on silent. So let's foster this process, let's accelerate this process, let's help them in this respect, because this is actually for our benefit as well.
I don't mean to smile, but look, from my perspective as an analyst, and I'll submit to you, I'm an American. I'm thousands of miles removed from the problem, and I don't have the same level of responsibility that you have. But just as an outside observer, to me, Russia has been, for many decades, a strategic source of energy security for the world. Russia has provided Europe with cheap gas that has enabled Europe to prosper as a continent. And Russia's reputation has always been that it will not weaponize energy, that it will be a responsible provider of energy, and that once you sign a contract with Russia, Russia will honor that contract. And so far, Russia has lived up to every one of its obligations. Frustratingly so, I would think, for some Russians who question why you keep supplying energy to Europe when Europe's treating you so badly. When Europe says they want to sanction Russian energy, why does Russia keep providing energy? And I think the answer is because Russia is a responsible nation that fulfills its contractual obligations. But now if Russia goes down the path that you have hinted at, where there's the potential of Russia of mysterious explosions, does this not change Russia's status in the eyes of the world as a nation that will weaponize energy, and won't that have detrimental impact for Russia going forward?
You know, let's be honest. That was the US which called Russia as the main enemy, but not vice versa. That's how it works. That's what the case is. And now, when we are said that you are the main enemies and you are to be destroyed, we should follow these contract obligations. Probably we should have done that. We would have done it if the West hadn't imposed sanctions. That was not us who had imposed sanctions. You started that. You know, all these sanctions, and when there is a question about the Siemens turbines, that's absolutely a lie. The turbine of Siemens is produced in Great Britain, and the British imposed sanctions. That's why the turbine couldn't have been used in Nord Stream 1. If you don't want that, so please stay without gas. You know, Europe is not homogeneous. There are some states in Europe which are ready to negotiate. Sometimes they do depend on the US, but they do understand that without Russian energy, they are just dead. 19th century. People don't want to go back to 19th century. That's absolutely true. So today, when two lines of Nord Stream first have been blown, I don't understand how they're going to survive in Europe. It was not us who had done this damage. They keep on saying that we show Donetsk, we show the nuclear station in Zaporozhye, and now we have blown the Nord Stream in the territorial area of NATO countries. That's absolute nonsense. If you act in this way, so please stay without gas. It's not a problem to sell gas. Yes, for some period of time, we will see the consumption in production. We have this explored gas for a century ahead, and maybe for 20, 30 generations in Russia. We have Asian states, and they pay for this gas. We are going to provide the power of Siberia pipeline too. Within 4 years, we are going to complete this process, and we are going to have the complete and reliable supply of gas without any Europe. And when Europe says that you cannot live without us, that's absolutely nonsense. Russia will survive. It's a big territory, it's a big country. We have our own mindset. It's absolutely different. And you can understand that when you have lived in Russia for a period of time. There is no sanctions that can destroy Russia. That's absolutely just in vain. And the more sanctions we see, the stronger Russia is going to be and the stronger support our president is going to have. Why in Kherson, in Zaporozhye, in Lugansk, in Donetsk, we see this kind of vote rate in the referendum? Because they were killed by Ukrainians, they were shot by Ukrainians, and just civilians were killed. And if you conduct this referendum in Kherson 3 months ago, it's not absolutely the fact that the result would have been the same. But after the civilians were killed, that's the result you can see. And the stronger they shell, the more strife for Russia is seen. We're not afraid of anything. You clearly understand that in the years to come, no good relations with West or the USA are not possible. If you can threat nuclear weapons, what the Prime Minister of Great Britain says, she is a suicider, because without using our strategic potential, nuclear potential, only through tactical nuclear weapons, we will turn Great Britain into a desert. And the USA will keep on silent because they know that we have a strategic potential on our shoulders, which will destroy the US for sure. Nothing will be left. We didn't want to wage war. We were not moving to the borders of West and NATO. NATO was coming to us. And then we put that on the table. We said, just get out of here, move to your former borders. We're not willing to wage war. And the main question whether we wage war against Ukraine or not, I'd like to say that Mr. Gorbachev in 1991 collapsed Russia, which was called USSR. And remember this wording. Please convey this message to all the citizens of the US. In 1917, the USSR was created out of Russia, which was actually liberated by Bolsheviks. That was only Russia. It used to be, it is, and it will be. Whether Ukraine demilitarized or denazified is going to stay, this is not even a question on the table. The question is about the relations between Russia and the US. Zelensky and all his mob, we don't care about them. We shouldn't speak to them. We should speak to your leaders. And these are just puppies speaking to your prompters and doing whatever you order them to do. We don't understand that. That's what is happening. We will not get it back. We're going to use any possible forces to state that even if we won the Second World War on our shoulders, with our almost 30 million people killed, we still remember, we commemorate the memory of them. That's what the people who gave us the future of today's Russia. We're not going to step back. In any way, we're going to win this war.
Okay, now here's my last question for you, though. It's going to be in a couple parts. First of all, you say you're going to win this war, and I do not doubt the sincerity of your statement. But what does victory look like? In December of last year, Russia provided NATO and the United States with a draft treaty that talked about a new European security framework, and that was the Russian strategic goal and objective. is victory simply the defeat of Ukraine, denazification, demilitarization, or is victory only achieved when Russia gets the West to agree to a new European security framework along the lines which Russia put on the table in December? And then the second part of the question is, my history is one of being an inspector in the former Soviet Union. I helped implement the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. I worked at a Soviet missile factory monitoring the production in terms of compliance with the treaty. And from my perspective, as somebody who served in the Marine Corps in the 1980s, who, frankly speaking, trained to fight the Russians, to see the transformation away from a war footing to cooperation, heading towards peaceful coexistence, was an amazing thing. But we lost it. Somehow we're where we're at today. Can you envision a time in the future where we can recapture that spirit and get back on the path of disarmament and peaceful cooperation? Maybe not friendship, but at least peaceful cooperation.
Но у нас есть русская поговорка.
We have Russian saying, any peace is better than any type of war. Since the time which you are talking about, it was not us who have withdrawn from all the treaties, on INF treaties, on anti-ballistic treaty, on conventional wisdom. You withdraw from these treaties, believing that they were not relevant for you anymore. I would like to be honest that all the Russians have a feeling, that the words of the American establishment are worthless, because you say these words today and you do not keep on your promise. We have a different mindset. As for the victory, the borders, the frontiers of the victory or of so-called peaceful existence have been outlined in December 2021. And no one has rejected these objectives. And that's what is going to happen. I do understand this process may take a long time, it may require a long time, it might be very difficult for us. But we are going to reach that, and there is no doubt about that. I hope that I have answered your question.
Звука нет. Сейчас слышу хорошо. Ну, давайте настраивайте, что я его не слышу. Так же тоже не дело.
I think we lost connection there for a minute.
Да, я извиняюсь, тоже последняя фраза я не слышал.
I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't hear your last phrase due to connection problems.
No, I was thanking you very much for appearing here today. I think your answers provided a whole new framework, hopefully for people in the United States who are watching. It was very educational process. It was educational for myself. And I wish you the best going forward. I know in the next couple of days it's going to be a very historic moment for Russia, and I think you're going to play a part in that. I just want to give you a final opportunity to say anything that you might think the American people should hear.
Я хочу пожелать
I'd like to wish American people peace and benefit. I'd like to wish American people the high level of their standard of living. I'd like to wish the prosperity. I'd like to wish the American people, for its elite, for its establishment, to care about the American people. And we on the ground somehow will succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And that was episode 6. I think we all learned something from this, and I look forward to talking to you next week.